On today's Locked On Jayhawks, does Kansas have their replacement for Devin Neal at running back in 2025 with their latest transfer portal addition, Leshon Williams?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio, Blue Sky at Derek Johnson, and this is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every show. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the show. This is a bonus episode of the show coming at you on your Monday night. Kansas football making the addition of an Iowa transfer running back in Leshon Williams. We're going to get into what it means for the running back room. We're going to get into his game, a little bit of a scouting report. Is he going to be the replacement for Devin Neal in terms of being the starting running back for KU in 2025? So what happened here? Well, he became kind of the Isaiah Moss of KU football running back position. If you remember Isaiah Moss for KU basketball, committed elsewhere. I can't remember. It was Arkansas or maybe Memphis or something like that. Committed elsewhere. Ended up flipping to KU out of the transfer portal, and the rest is history. Became a starter, important player on what was a really good KU basketball team. Well, hopefully that ends up happening here with Leshon Williams because he was previously committed to Memphis. And then about a week after committing to Memphis, he's decided to be a Kansas Jayhawk. And I don't know, maybe it was just a trade. Maybe it was a player to be named later. We're going to get into in a Tuesday episode, Kenyon Rivera, one of their 2025 commits, flipped to Memphis. So maybe, I don't know, this is just an odd trade coming back the other way. But in all seriousness, he is a 5'10", 214-pound running back from Chicago, Illinois. He spent 5 seasons at the University of Iowa. So this will be his 6th year in college, in his final year at that. He had a big season in 2023 for what was not a very good Iowa offense, but he still managed to, have really good rushing numbers, which is always impressive for an offense that's not very good because they can just stack the box against you. But then coming into this year, he was injured. He was battling through injuries in some of his early games at the beginning of the year. You look at the stats this year, they might not jump off the page. He was playing through injury. And then also Caleb Johnson, who this season emerged as a real Heisman candidate, a possible first-round NFL draft pick, over 1,500 yards, 21 touchdowns. I guess you could say, did he beat him out? Was it aided by the injury? Would he have beat him out anyway? I mean, the way he's been playing, it's hard to say he wouldn't have won that job regardless. But, still, to say that you lost your job to somebody who, when you were injured and ended up having an All-American level season, there's no shame in that, right? And if he would have been healthy and been in front of the job, does he get the first crack at it? And does he have the season that Caleb Johnson ended up happening? So anyway, he ends up redshirting this year, and he'll have one final year next year, which will be his 6th season in college football. He joined originally and did not play in the 2020 COVID season. So 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, and then 2025 will be his 6th season. So older player at the running back position. Let's get into the running back room and his scouting report to see, will he eventually be the starter for KU? This is Locked On Jayhawks. Bonus episode today is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. Continuing on this bonus episode, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget you can check out our full episodes for your second listen every day. So Leshon Williams, what is his scouting report? Well, let's take a look at the stats. So as I mentioned, did not play in 2020. Then 2021, limited action, 21 carries as basically a second-year player. Some more playing time in 2022, 413 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 117 carries, though, so only 3.5 yards per carry. That doesn't sound great. But then 2023, that was his best season. He wound up with 170 carries for 821 yards and a touchdown on 4.8 yards per carry. And if you remember that 2023 Iowa team was the one that had Caden McNamara get injured in the early half of the season. And then they had, what was the backup quarterback's name? I don't know. Really bad numbers. Like, they could not do anything on the offensive end of the ball. It was like one of the worst offenses in the entire country. So the fact that you average 4.8 yards per carry as an offense that couldn't throw the ball, the teams are stacking the box and couldn't really, move the ball overall besides you, is actually like very impressive. It's already, 4.8 yards per carry is already solid to begin with, but when you grade it on a curve, it becomes even more impressive. He didn't have much receiving in his Iowa career, and there's also a bit of a lack of touchdowns. Again, only one touchdown with 170 carries, 821 yards. You go back to the two previous seasons, you're talking about just shy of 300 carries with only 3 touchdowns, and it's weird because he's a bigger back. He has some breakaway speed, but I wouldn't call him a burner in any way of it. Like, he does have good physicality to him. A bit perplexing, he only has 3 touchdowns. Is that just because the Iowa offense is so bad they just couldn't get in the end zone? Is that because of usage where they had somebody else as the goal line back? Is that because he's not as good at converting those short plays that Devin Neal was so good at? I don't have the answer to that, but that is something that I think will be an interesting question coming into the year. Could just be usage and the Iowa offense, and he's going to be just fine at getting touchdowns for KU. But he had over 100 yards in games against Nebraska in 2023, Wisconsin, which both you think of as having solid run defenses in 2023, Western Michigan. But he also did have 5 games with 25 or less rushing yards. So it seemed like you had a bit of boom or bust with him, even though, like I said, he has some breakaway speed, but I wouldn't call him a burner. He did have a 20-plus yard carry in 4 separate games in 2023. When you look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, interestingly enough, the year that he averaged 3.5 yards per carry in 2022, he had a better PFF grade. He had a 71 PFF grade that year. So maybe that just gets attributed to he only averaged that low amount of yards per carry because the offensive line was just really bad. 2023, he was a 66 overall, which puts him, basically above average or slightly average starter in college football. He had 16 runs of 10 or more yards in 2023. Out of comparison, Devin Neal had 34 of those. Daniel Hishaw had 12 of those. The year before, 2023, Hishaw had 18 of those. So that shows you the explosiveness is probably closer to Hishaw than it would be Devin Neal. He also averaged in 2023 2.94 yards after contact per rush. Devin Neal this season was at 3.71. So, you're getting more broken tackles from Devin Neal. Daniel Hishaw this past season was 3.29. So also Hishaw better at breaking tackles. Now, if you go back to Devin Neal's freshman year, Devin Neal averaged 2.94 yards after contact per rush as well. So basically think about it this way. He's more of like a Devin Neal freshman year type of runner, which Devin, got better as he stayed in school, but he was still a really good player as a freshman, right? So maybe not quite as explosive in those ways, but you also got to figure too, right? We were grading on a curve, as we said, with the Iowa offense and teams loading the box. It's also think about the conferences they play in. When I think about the Big 12, I think defenses have gotten a lot better. Like, anybody who's still clinging to the idea that this is like this just offensive air raid run and gun league, like it was 10 years ago, maybe even, 5, 6, 7 years ago, like that's not the case anymore. But when you think about Big 10 defenses and Big 12 defenses, just on a generality, right? This isn't true for everybody. There are certain schools that buck the trend for both sides. But for the most part, I think of more lumbering good run defenses in the Big 10 than the Big 12. So you're going to have heavier personnel in the Big 10 typically, maybe going to be opened up a little bit more at Kansas. So that could certainly help from that perspective. And here's what's interesting too. When you look at Leshon Williams, when he ran outside the tight end to the left side, so basically those outside zone plays in 2023, he averaged 6.1 yards per carry. That was his one of his best zones. Guess where Devin Neal had his most yards and yards per carry in the 2023 season? Left end of the tight end at 9.7. Now in 2024, those numbers switched and dropped significantly on the left side, but he had his most yards and yards per attempt on the outside of the tight end to the right side. So same idea, just flip the side. So point being, KU likes to run to the outside. You think of those wide zone plays, and Leshon Williams did really good at it, at least to one direction in 2023. So that could work out very well for this KU offense. All right, let's finish up. What does the running back room look like, and does he have a good chance to start? This is Locked On Jayhawks. This bonus episode is brought to you by Game Time, which is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time has their ticket coverage, where your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's all one word for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Finishing up our bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. So what does the running back room look like now, potentially for 2025? Well, you look at the returning players. Sevion Morrison set to be I guess, would that be a sixth-year senior? He has another year left for KU next year, and I think it was encouraging to see Sevion, stay more healthy this year than in previous years and get more run at the end of the season. It makes you feel more confident he can make an impact on next year's team. But there's going to be a chance that Harry Stewart, who will be a redshirt freshman next year, Johnny Thompson, who will be a redshirt sophomore, that one of those guys who seems to be very talented takes another step and ends up being the starter. Very possible. You also have two freshmen coming in, John Kelly, Justin Thurman, as part of this as well. And then you add Leshon Williams to the fold. That's 6 scholarship running backs at the moment for KU. I think right now, if you were projecting the starter, I would project it to be Leshon Williams. Now, what if we do see Harry Stewart or somebody like that break out in the spring? What if Sevion Morrison, knowing the playbook, that's a big difference. It is interesting because the running style might be a little bit closer to Daniel Hishaw. I think it's a mix, honestly, of Hishaw and Neal if we're just taking those top 2 running backs for KU last year, but it would probably lean closer to the spectrum of the side of Devin Neal in this one. And, what does that mean for who's going to get the most carries? Does it mean KU is going to go for another running back in the transfer portal? I don't know. With 6 scholarship running backs, if they do go for another running back in the transfer portal, it tells me that they're going for somebody to be the starter, and they envision Williams more in that Daniel Hishaw like running back number 2 role specifically. But as of right now, if I was projecting the starting lineup, I think I would put Leshon Williams in as the starter, but I don't think it's enough of a foothold for me to just automatically be like, oh, well, I would, be shocked if Harry Stewart or Johnny Thompson or Sevion Morrison wasn't the starter as well, because I could see that being the case for anybody. So truly open competition. But right now, I'd probably give the leg up right there. And I think there's a reason KU wanted to add more experience to the running back room after losing Devin Neal. Seems like Daniel Hishaw away from the team, and I don't know if the expectation is that he'd be back, so that'd be unfortunate. But Leshon Williams becomes a nice addition in a year where Kansas is really going to have to hit the transfer portal hard. They've already done it well with Williams, Bengali Kamara as well, a couple Power 4 level transfers for KU. We'll see if they can keep this rolling on the recruiting trail for Lance Leipold and company. That'll do it for this bonus episode of the show. We will be back on Tuesday to discuss more about the KU football offseason with the biggest decisions to be had for the KU football offseason, including with Jalen Daniels. See you then on Locked On Jayhawks.